So as I find myself on my journey through this life, I'm realizing that there are a couple of things that I am constantly finding myself struggling with. And with a voice calling out, I wanted to create an outlet for myself to be able to share about these struggles that I'm having, or just different thoughts that go through my mind, and how I'm tackling them, and how I am finding a resource in my spirituality to tackle these different aspects in my life. One of the major topics that I find myself struggling for a very long while now is the issue of power and authority. And as you guys well know, I'm a Christian and I love to read the Bible and I love to interpret it, I love to talk about it, and I love to integrate it in my spiritual practices. And as I'm reading the Bible, I'm realizing that I'm stumbling on this idea of authority and the power, which is kind of there at every step I take. And it came to a point when I had to say, okay, you know what? I need to stop here and I need to be a while with my feelings, with my thoughts, and realize and reflect on them and ask myself, what's happening? Why is this making me so uncomfortable? How can I deal with this? And that's what I did. I sat down and I reflected on my feelings, and I talked and I thought about how this whole topic makes me feel, and I asked myself why, and I tried to look for answers, and I also inspired myself from different authors who talked about authority and power in different ways, and looked it up a little bit in the dictionary to check, just to know that I'm using the right words for what I think that they mean. And this has been a spiritual development for me over the past couple of years. And right now I just thought I'm going to sit down and talk to you a little bit about how I struggled with the idea of power and authority, how I weirdly and paradoxically found something inspiring and empowering in these ideas, and how I'm putting these different ideas together in my way of integrating every aspect of my life, my feelings, my thoughts, and my beliefs. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to my series about authority and power. I am planning of doing a 3-part series, one tackling my problems about it, and the second one tackling what inspires me about it, and the third one trying to integrate it and also sharing with you my hands-on tips on how I will go about this in my life. So before I start any kind of discussion, I really like to set my terms straight and tell you what I mean by power and what I mean by authority. I am citing the Merriam-Webster dictionary on this at several points, so just feel free to look at it. By power, I mean the ability to act and produce an effect. Power is a force, a might, a source of energy, and it's more than anything an ability that resides inside of us. And authority is a right to exercise power. It's a right to use power to command feelings, thoughts, or behaviors. So as a right, it is not an ability, it is something that is either granted or taken away. So authority is the right to exercise power. And here's my problem with it. I have 2 main problems and just the third one to top it all off. First of all, I don't like the idea on principle that some people are granted a right to exercise power over other people. It just feels very, very choking and abusive, and it makes something with my stomach that just makes me feel very, very uncomfortable and even afraid. So here are a few situations where authority is used to exercise powers. We in our human lives have roles in which we are the one up or the one down. For example, parents and children have this dynamics of parents being the one up and children being the one down. Teachers and students, the same. Bosses and their employees, the same basically. If you are someone who goes to church or belongs to any kind of spiritual tradition, you will also have this idea of spiritual authority, which is granted in some traditions only in very special circumstances. And let's not forget about the government and politicians who basically have the authority to exercise power over whole nations. And this idea of depending on someone else, on having to submit to someone else, obviously does not resonate with me as a modern human being. It makes me feel limited. It makes me feel kind of like chained in a way. So this is the first thing, the principle that really bothers me, is that basically whoever has authority has the power to create reality for everybody else, and that puts me and puts others who are in the one down situation in a very vulnerable position, and nobody wants to be there. And this is what I observed from my emotional reactions to being in this position. On a gut level, first, I feel fear. I feel like I cannot trust anybody other than myself to depend on. And I feel like it's such an injustice to have the system where some have more power than others, and those who have less power are totally dependent, totally at the mercy of those who are in power. And a second thing that bothers me is very closely related to the first one, and that's how I see authority being exercised. And this one pisses me off to no end. When I see politicians taking advantage of their power and making themselves and their bodies more rich, and the poor ones who would need their help poorer, oh my god. When I see parents abuse their children in emotional ways or in any other ways, I get so angry. So it's not just the idea, but it's more than anything seeing how the idea works in reality, and how everywhere I look in this world I see some sort of abuse of power. Because you always see these one up and one down situations where your boss just requires you to do extra hours and you have no way to choose what's better for you because you depend on that money, or just stuff like that. And obviously I hate this. I hate this situation with my whole entire being. And I guess I'm really not alone in this. I see all around me this new revolutions coming up against authority and speaking truth to power, which I'm really a fan of. And I love to see people standing up and saying, no, this is not okay. It's not okay for you to abuse your power, no matter what kind of power you have, whether you're a parent, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a boss or a president. It's not okay to abuse your power. It's not okay to abuse those who depend on your power, because that's the thing. That's the very, very hard thing, that when you're in power, you are automatically responsible. But so many people act irresponsible with this power. But I'm seeing also something else that makes me feel very, very unsettled. And I guess I can totally understand why newly I'm reading so much about philosophical principles of just divorcing with the idea of power altogether and authority altogether, and try and make like an egalitarian society, or egalitarian parenting, or egalitarian teaching, or all that. And this is the third thing that makes me feel so uncomfortable about my being uncomfortable with power. And that is when I am listening to these ideas of just abolishing power and authority altogether and have everybody decide their own reality, also on a gut level and intuitively, I feel that cannot be the right answer. And this was so hard for me to realize, and it's so hard also to put in words, because I know it's going to be a totally unpopular opinion, but here it goes. The more I was thinking about what power really means, I started to realize that power, energy, force cannot be something that is only bad. If the sun is the power and the earth is dependent on the sun, then if we were to say, oh no, I don't need power, I don't need authority, then it would literally mean that we would cut ourselves up from our source of life. And I don't think that's what we would want to do. Then the whole idea of power is something good. And then I started thinking more about parenting and power. Well, parents have the power to make decisions on behalf of their very, very young children, because those children do not have it yet. And it's part of their power to help their children being empowered with age, but that comes through authority and through teaching their children how to grab and be responsible about their own power as they grow up. Also, whenever I'm reading something on a topic that I'm interested in, I'm looking for books, I'm looking for articles from people who know about the subject, who literally we say are the authority on the subject. So it cannot be that power and authority is only bad and we have to abolish it altogether in order to be in a more just society or in a more just lifestyle. And this is what makes me so uncomfortable, because I feel like, in a way, in this whole very polarized world where there's a right and a left, I fall in nowhere, because I hate power on principle, but as I'm more thinking about it, I realize that I hate it because of how it makes me feel, because of how I saw it being done and how I experienced it being done to me. But then when I sit with these feelings, give them some space, give myself space to speak out these wounds and these hurt parts of myself and allow myself to be there, I'm realizing that the problem was not power and the problem was not authority. The problem was how it was used and the people who used it wrongly. As you can see, I'm deeply ambivalent about this idea, and on two different levels, on my gut level and on my, let's say, intellectual level, I have two strong and equally important arguments for and against power. So I am choosing to live in this position because it is what makes my experience really be authentic. And in my next videos, I am planning to give a few more points on how I'm living this ambivalence. So stay tuned for this series. I am really curious to find out, how do you relate to these ideas? Have you also, as I have, had experiences with authority that abused its power? If so, I'm pretty sure you know these feelings of fear and anger and rebellion. How do you choose to cope with them? I found that one of the things that I found myself how I wanted to cope with this was by wanting to grab power, but not for the good of those who would then be dependent on me, which would make me keep on the circle of abuse, which is something that I really don't want to do with my life. Have you ever noticed this? Hurt people. What do you think about my take on authority also having a very positive role and value in our society and in our life in general. I'm planning to talk about the positive aspects a little bit more down the road, but I'm really curious if you ever consider this as well. So, in any case, if you'd like to start a conversation about authority and power, how about you drop down in the comment section and let me know what you think about it. And if you like my content in general and would like to influence a little bit more about where this channel goes, then make sure to subscribe and leave me a message about the things that you're interested to hear more about or less about. Until next time, guys, take good care of yourselves. Bye!